Okay, ladies and gentlemen, section 6.1 involves some fairly detailed concepts. We're taking some things from the past and reinforcing them, and we're kind of turning up the heat on some other things. So, the first question, find the domain of this rational function. First of all, the reason this is called a rational function, it is the ratio of two polynomial functions. One is a polynomial, x plus 1 is a polynomial. One's on the top, one's on the bottom. That's why it's called a ratio. Now, when you're working with a rational function, and this is especially valid for those of you going on in higher math, when I teach college algebra, one of the first things I would hope my students would tell me when we were dealing with a rational function or even a rational equation is to watch out for what are called restricted values. A restricted value is a value that you put in for the variable in the denominator that would make the denominator become 0. So for example, in this particular problem, I'm calling -1 a restricted value because if I put in a -1 into the denominator, -1 plus 1 would become 0. And if you remember from arithmetic, dividing by 0 is not allowed. If you tried to put into your calculator 1 divided by 0, it would give you an error. So when you're working with a rational function, one of the very first things you do is you find what we call RVs. RV does not mean recreational vehicle, it means restricted value. And the definition of a restricted value, listen carefully, write it down if you need to, play this video over several times. A restricted value is any number that you would put in for the variable that would cause the denominator to become 0. So what you should be seeing here, -1 in this problem is a restricted value. That's why I'm writing x cannot equal -1. Now on the flip side it says find the domain. Well, here's the answer to part A, written in set builder notation. The domain is the set of x's such that x does not equal -1. What that means in English, x can be any real number as long as it's not -1. Okay? The second part asks to write the answer in interval notation. I always teach my students that before they write interval notation, they should draw a number line. -infinity goes on the left, positive infinity symbol goes on the right. Notice that I took -1 and I circled it with a hollow circle. That means I threw it out. Everything else is included. So if I wrote my graph in interval, if I changed my graph into interval notation, my symbols would be -infinity to -1, union -1 to infinity. And notice there are no brackets on the -1 because if you put a bracket, that would mean you would be including it back again, and you're not including it. You are excluding it. So, before we go on to the next set of problems, by definition, a restricted value, and I want you to write this in your notes again, a restricted value is any real number so that when you put it in a denominator, it would make the denominator become 0. If a denominator becomes 0, we are in trouble. So that is why we always watch out for restricted values so that we don't allow ourselves to use them. Okay, I'm going to make several videos over this section, so please watch all of them.